June 19, 1944. 200 miles northwest of Saipan. Japanese pilot Lieutenant Saburo Sakai squinted through his canopy at the distant specks. American fighters. Lots of them. He smiled. Sakai had shot down 64 Allied planes. He was one of Japan's best. And he was flying a Zero, the plane that owned the Pacific sky. The plane that could outmaneuver anything America had. The plane that made American pilots scream on their radios before they died. This was going to be another good day. Sakai remembered 3 years ago, Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, the Philippines. Japanese Zeros had torn through American fighters like paper. The old Wildcats couldn't turn with a Zero, couldn't climb with a Zero, couldn't run from a Zero. American pilots died by the hundreds. They died so fast their friends barely had time to learn their names. Japanese pilots joked about it. They called American fighters flying coffins. They said shooting them down was easier than training exercises. And they were right. For 3 years, the Zero had been king. Then Sakai saw them. Not the old Wildcats. Something new, bigger, heavier. Dark blue paint that looked almost black. They weren't trying to dogfight. They weren't turning. They were diving straight down from above, fast, really fast. Sakai pulled hard on his stick. His Zero snapped into a tight turn. The Americans didn't follow. They kept diving, past him, past his wingmen, straight into the bombers below. Sakai heard the guns. 650 caliber machine guns per plane. The sound was different, heavier, like thunder. His wingman Zero exploded, just gone. Another Zero spun down, trailing fire. Then another. Sakai looked around. 8 Zeros were burning. The Americans had been there less than 30 seconds. Each of those American fighters carried over 2,000 rounds. The Zero carried about 500. Each American plane weighed 7,000 pounds empty. The Zero weighed 3,700. Each American fighter had 6 50 caliber guns. The Zero had 2 small 20mm cannons and 2 rifle caliber machine guns. And those Americans could take punishment. Zeros would catch fire from a single burst. These new American fighters were flying tanks. They were Grumman F6F Hellcats, and in the next year, they would kill Japanese pilots at a rate of 19 to 1. 19 Japanese planes were destroyed for every Hellcat lost. Sakai survived that day. Most of his friends didn't. This is the story of how Japan learned they'd been flying the wrong airplane all along. Back in 1941, the Zero was a miracle. It could fly for 8 hours without refueling. It could turn inside any fighter in the world. It could climb to 20,000 feet in 7 minutes. American planes took twice as long. Zero pilots believed they were invincible. And for a while, they were. At Pearl Harbor, Zeros shot down dozens of American planes. Not one Zero was lost in air combat. In the Philippines, Zeros destroyed half of America's Far East Air Force in 2 days. At Darwin, Australia, Zeros shot down 8 Allied fighters without a single loss. The math was brutal. In the first 6 months of war, Zeros had a kill ratio of 12 to 1. For every Zero lost, 12 Allied planes went down. Japanese pilots got cocky. Why wouldn't they? Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Itaya flew over Pearl Harbor that morning. He said it was like shooting clay pigeons. Easy, almost boring. The American planes were so slow, so clumsy. Itaya shot down 2 in less than a minute. He said the second one didn't even try to dodge. The pilot probably never saw him coming. Japanese newspapers called their pilots samurai of the sky. Radio broadcasts said American pilots were cowards who ran away. Except they couldn't run away. The Zero was faster. And if they tried to fight, the Zero would outturn them every time. It was a perfect weapon, or so they thought. But the Zero had a secret weakness. It was light because it had almost no armor. No armor protecting the pilot, no armor protecting the fuel tanks, no bulletproof glass on the canopy, nothing. Grumman Aircraft knew this. They'd captured a Zero that crashed in Alaska in 1942. They studied every inch of it. They tested it. They flew it against American planes. And they learned its weakness. The Zero could outmaneuver you, sure, but if you could hit it, it would burn. So Grumman designed a fighter that could hit it hard. The F6F Hellcat first flew in June 1942. It looked nothing like a Zero. It was big, heavy, almost twice the weight. It had a thick armor plate behind the pilot. It had self-sealing fuel tanks that wouldn't explode when hit. It had 6 .50 caliber machine guns that fired bullets the size of your thumb. And it had a 2,000 horsepower engine that could push it to 380 miles per hour. That was 20 miles per hour faster than a Zero. But speed wasn't the real advantage. The real advantage was tactics. American pilots learned a new way to fight. Don't dogfight a Zero, you'll lose. Instead, fly high, stay above them, then dive down, shoot, and climb back up. The Hellcat could dive faster than a Zero. It could take hits that would destroy a Zero. And it could climb back to safety while the Zero pilot was still turning around. The Japanese called this the boom and zoom. They hated it. It was like being hunted by an eagle. You never saw it coming. By the time you heard the guns, you were already dead. The first big test came in August 1943. American carriers launched Hellcats against Rabaul. The Japanese command sent 50 Zeros to intercept. They expected an easy victory. They got slaughtered. American pilots used the new tactics: dive, shoot, and climb. Dive, shoot, and climb. 20 Japanese planes went down. 2 Hellcats were lost. The Japanese couldn't believe it. How did the Americans learn to fight like this? Where did these new planes come from? And why couldn't they catch them? Then the numbers started coming in, numbers that seemed impossible. In November 1943, Hellcats shot down 30 Zero fighters over Tarawa. 0 Hellcats lost. In January 1944, Hellcats destroyed 68 Japanese planes at Kwajalein. 4 Hellcats lost. In February, during the raid on Truk, Hellcats shot down 127 Japanese planes in 2 days. 12 Hellcats lost. The ratio kept getting worse for Japan. Or better, depending on which side you were on. American factories were building Hellcats faster than Japan could train new pilots. Grumman's plant in Bethpage, New York, was pumping out planes at an insane rate. In 1943, they built 2,400 Hellcats. In 1944, they built 6,200. That's 17 planes per day. One American factory was building almost half as many fighters as all of Japan combined. And the Hellcats were better planes. Japanese pilot Saburo Sakai wrote about his first encounter with a Hellcat. He said it was like fighting a bear. You could slash at it all day. You might draw blood, but one hit from the bear would kill you instantly. Sakai shot up a Hellcat with his cannons, 20mm shells hitting the wings and fuselage. The Hellcat kept flying. It turned and fired back, 6 guns blazing. Sakai's Zero took 3 hits and the engine quit. He barely made it back to base. The Hellcat flew back to its carrier, landed safely, and the pilot flew again the next day. Sakai never flew a Zero in combat again. It was suicide.
Another Japanese ace, Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, had shot down 87 Allied planes. He was Japan's top fighter pilot. In October 1944, he fought 6 Hellcats over the Philippines. He shot down 1, maybe, he wasn't sure. The other 5 swarmed him. He ran. The great Nishizawa ran away. He told the squadron that fighting Hellcats was impossible. They were too fast, too tough, too many. He recommended avoiding combat when outnumbered. This from a man who once took on 12 Allied planes alone and shot down 4. The Hellcat had broken him. American factories didn't just build planes. They built everything. The Pratt & Whitney factory in Connecticut built 18,000 engines in 1944. Engines for Hellcats, engines for Corsairs, engines for bombers. Japan's largest engine factory built 12,000 engines that whole war. One American factory made more engines in 1 year than Japan made in 4 years. Japanese pilots knew this. They knew they were doomed, but they kept flying anyway. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot proved it. June 19, 1944, the same day Saburo Sakai's world changed forever. Japan sent 428 planes to attack the American fleet near Saipan. The Americans had 450 Hellcats waiting. It was supposed to be a fair fight. Same numbers, open ocean, clear skies. It wasn't fair at all. It was a massacre. American pilots called it the greatest turkey shoot of all time. By the end of the day, Japan had lost 350 planes. 350. The Americans lost 29. Not all to enemy fire. Some ran out of gas trying to find their carriers in the dark. The actual combat losses were lower. One American pilot, Lieutenant Alex Vareshu, shot down 6 Japanese dive bombers in 8 minutes. 6 planes, 8 minutes. He said it was like shooting ducks at a carnival. He radioed his carrier and said he'd run out of targets. They sent him after more. Another pilot, Ensign Wilbur Webb, had never shot down a plane before. He got 4 that day. When he landed, his crew chief counted the bullet holes in his Hellcat. 11. All small caliber, nothing serious. His plane was ready to fly again within an hour. Japanese pilots who survived the turkey shoot came back in shock. They'd lost 2/3 of their force. Admiral Ozawa's carriers lost so many planes they could barely defend themselves. American submarines sank 2 of those carriers the next day. Without air cover, the carriers were helpless. The Japanese carriers that survived sailed back to Japan and never launched another major strike. They didn't have enough planes left. They didn't have enough pilots left. And they didn't have any way to stop the Hellcats. The kill ratio got even more one-sided as the war went on. By 1945, Japan was sending up pilots with 50 hours of training. American pilots had over 300 hours before they saw combat. Japanese pilots had no fuel for practice. American pilots could fly as much as they wanted. Japan was running out of everything: fuel, metal, rubber, pilots. America had so much of everything that they could afford to lose planes and not care. Not that they lost many. The final ratio for the Hellcat was 19-1. 19 Japanese planes were destroyed for every Hellcat lost in combat. 5,156 enemy planes shot down total. Only 270 Hellcats lost to enemy aircraft. It wasn't even close. American factories built 12,275 Hellcats during the war. Japan couldn't shoot them down fast enough. They couldn't build enough Zeros to fight them. They couldn't train pilots fast enough to replace the ones dying every day. Saburo Sakai survived the war, barely. He spent the last year training new pilots. Kids, really. 17 and 18-year-olds who'd never been in a real dogfight. He taught them not to engage Hellcats if they could avoid it. Run away. Drop your bombs and run. Don't try to be a hero. You'll just die. Most of them died anyway. After the war, Japanese pilots were interviewed by American officers. They asked what weapons surprised them most. What did they fear? What made the biggest difference? Almost all of them said the Hellcat. Not the B-29 bombers, not the submarines, not the atomic bombs. The Hellcat. It had taken control of the sky and never given it back. Japanese ace Saburo Sakai said the Hellcat was the best carrier fighter of the war. Better than anything Japan made, better than anything Germany made. He said if Japan had the Hellcat instead of the Zero, the war would have gone very differently. That's high praise from a man who shot down 64 Allied planes. The numbers tell the whole story. American industry built 300,000 aircraft during World War II. Japan built 76,000. American factories made 24,000 Hellcats, Corsairs, and other fighters just for carriers. Japan made 10,000 carrier fighters in total. America trained 80,000 new pilots during the war. Japan trained 45,000. And America did all this while also fighting Germany and Italy at the same time. Japan focused everything on fighting America and still got crushed. The Zero dominated early because American industry wasn't ready yet. Once it was, the outcome was never in doubt. Saburo Sakai lived to the year 2000. He was 84. He wrote books about his experiences. He attended air shows in America. He met some of the Hellcat pilots who'd tried to kill him. They became friends. He told one American pilot that the Zero made him feel invincible. The Hellcat made him feel mortal. That was the difference. The Zero was a beautiful plane that promised victory. The Hellcat was a brutal machine that delivered it. One side had skill and courage and the best pilots in the world. The other side had armor and guns and an unstoppable factory back home. Guess which side won? By the time the war ended, the Hellcat had shot down more enemy aircraft than any other Allied fighter. More than the P-51 Mustang, more than the Spitfire, more than the P-47 Thunderbolt. 5,156 confirmed kills. 75% of all American naval aviation victories. And that 19-to-1 kill ratio. 19 Japanese planes were destroyed for every Hellcat lost in combat. It wasn't even close. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories about how American weapons shocked the enemy in World War II, check out the next video about the P-47 Thunderbolt, the plane German pilots called the Flying Milk Jug until it killed 3,000 of them. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss it.